today is going to be just talking about global cyber resilience with a focus on DDoS attacks, botnets and IoT. So what we're going to be looking at is why having an automated threat defense is obviously absolutely paramount in this day and age, and looking at some of our approaches, some of our customer benefits, and we're also going to talk a little bit about one of our USPs, which is how we use machine learning.
You've switched on.
Oh. Oh, there we go, we're back. There we go. So we're going to talk about one of our USPs, which is machine learning, and we're going to provide a little bit of a video on how that works, and then just a little bit about Link11. So I thought, seeing as it's the last bit of the day, we'll kick off with something nice and light-hearted, which is 3 certainties in life, being death, taxes, and DDoS. So none are good, as we know. But they're all absolutely certain to happen to you, especially if you're a company with online assets. And what we've seen through the stats, and obviously you've heard a lot of these throughout the day already today, but cyber attacks are obviously on the rise. DDoS attacks isn't different to that, and DDoS attacks are rising. I think with DDoS there tends to be a feeling that it's quite a traditional, old sort of method of attack. And when you talk about DDoS, people talk about just our volumetric attacks, and we've got something, we've got Arbor or gone again, back again. But it's about how it changes and how the marketplace and the industry has changed over the years. And you can see that obviously the DDoS attacks continues to rise. So firstly, let's talk about why having an automated system is absolutely paramount. And that is because of the ease of buying cyber attacks and different things through the dark web. They're available to anyone now, anyone that wants to potentially take you offline, whether it be a competitor, whether it be politically motivated, whether it be a hacktivist. And as you can see on the dark web, they're available for as little as $20 an hour. So you can launch quite a sizable DDoS attack for that. Some of the other things as well in terms of how the IoT has grown, obviously some headline stats there, but the one that always sort of stands out is over 8 billion devices now connected globally. And those devices obviously being made up of things with factory set passwords, whether those be routers, CCTVs, things of that nature, which can quite easily be hacked, and we've seen hacked in the past with things like the Security attack, which was an IoT attack, or also the Dyn attack, which obviously took down half the internet in 2016, obviously being the first of its kind and being the Mirai attack. It's also changed DDoS in the way that people can now harness the cloud computing power in order to amplify those attacks and the attack size. So previously it would always just be someone using their own internet lines or a series of internet lines to attack a website or infrastructure. But now we see AWS and Microsoft Azure accounts hacked quite regularly, and people can harness the computing power of those to really sort of scale up the DDoS attack size. So that's how we see the 1.2 terabits which hit GitHub. That's how we see the over 600 gigabit per second which hit Security. So obviously I've already gone over a little bit about some of the motives behind why people would want to be attacking people's websites. Gone again, back again. So we won't go into that too much. But as you can see, obviously it's still making headline news even now. DDoS attacks, it does tend to obviously get lost in quite a lot of the other security that we need to have in place as well. So obviously phishing attacks tends to be the topic of the day, I find, at these security events. But DDoS attacks is certainly still happening, and they're happening on a large scale. And the thing with the DDoS attack is sometimes they're not just used to take you offline. Yeah, it's literally, someone's DDoSing this as we speak, I think. But sometimes, yeah, they're not used to necessarily cause an outage or to take you offline. Sometimes, again... Stop it. Sometimes they're used as a distraction technique as well, while something else malicious is going on in the background, whether that be trying to change coding on the website or something of that nature. And obviously we've seen the attacks shift towards the cloud. We just spoke about how AWS and Microsoft Azure are particularly used in that instance to use greater computing power. And obviously with the fact that the criminals are now using automation to actually detect where your vulnerabilities lies, it's absolutely paramount that automation is involved in your security play. So a DDoS attack won't just be a case of someone picking you out at random. It will probably be more of a case of a computer automated system actually scanning for vulnerabilities, not just on your website, but on a lot of your competitors' websites and a lot of the top leading industry providers. So if they're picking out the weaknesses by that nature, it's absolutely key that you can protect using automation as well. So what's our approach? So obviously, if we're talking about cloud attacks and how cloud attacks are on the rise, then it's absolutely paramount that people have a cloud defense system in place as well. So with traditional methods and traditional firewalls, you're stuck with the maximum capacity of the bandwidth that you have with that firewall and the maximum capacity of that appliance. Even if it's a case of it's come through a cloud provider, that cloud provider will potentially be using someone like an Arbor system or something more traditional like that, but that Arbor system is being used by all of their client base, so it's not just something that's a dedicated resource to you. So how can you be absolutely sure that you're protected without having your own sort of cloud provider, DDoS provider in place? Obviously as well, with all the different types of security modules that people now have to have in place, it's key that we try and minimize the noise and minimize the alertings that's going on within SOC systems. We know that they've got multiple different platforms and providers that they need to monitor, and they need to try and take every alert seriously. So having that as an automated process is not just a case of being a good defense mechanism, but it's also being a case of being able to utilize the software that you've got in place. And obviously GDPR matters. GDPR is obviously incredibly important. I'm sure everyone in this room has dealt with GDPR to quite an extent. And it's important to make sure that all of your third-party providers are obviously complying with that as well. And I think that one thing that certainly stands us in good stead at Link11 is the fact that we're a German-originated company and we sign up to like the BCI Act as well in Germany. So that is a lot more stricter compliance regulation than GDPR when it comes to certain things. So how does the technology work? So you've got core infrastructure, and then you've got the edge services and how that traffic connects. And that's really where Link11 comes in. So how do we protect that core infrastructure? How do we move the protection shield away from your core infrastructure? So if you do receive an attack, it's not at the crown jewels, if you like, but it's actually being pushed out to a different provider and it's happening at a different space. So using the Link11 approach, you can have a completely rounded security approach that is happening fast and efficient, but it's happening outside of where your core infrastructure is based. So I just want to go on to a quick video which is going to explain some of the machine learning technologies which we utilize in our defense mechanisms.
Is it okay? Oh, it's this way. Am I hitting the right button?
What makes Link11's DDoS protection solution so unique? The answer lies in the AI-based filter technology. But how does it work? The filter process is divided into 4 steps. Step 1, plausibility check. In this step, the header of each individual IP packet is analyzed in real time and discarded in case of non-standard behavior. This way, even large parts of less complex attacks can be mitigated, where, for example, the checksum of the TCP packet is incorrect, or IP addresses from the private areas are used. The collected benefits of this unique technology when it comes to DDoS protection. A real-time protection through automation and exclusion of human error, which results in a guaranteed time to mitigate for every vector in 0 seconds for known patterns, and maximum 10 seconds for new patterns. A predictive protection, which ensures a reliable detection of unknown attack vectors. With our web and infrastructure DDoS protection, we ensure cyber resilience, regardless of which industry you are operating. Link11. Smarter, faster, safer. You want to talk to our cyber resilience experts? Contact us.
So firstly, just a little hand for my assistant up here. So we got up here for the video. Yeah, so just a couple of things that I want to pick up on in that, and I think that the reason that I wanted to display that video is because machine learning is a phrase which is thrown around a lot by a lot of different providers, and how does it work? Very few people will actually talk about what's involved in that process, how does it work, what does it look like, how many steps are there. So we want to be more transparent with that, because I think that a lot of it is a case of maybe it's not there in other companies, or it's a case of it's not quite as developed as they would like to say it is. So I think it's always important to talk about what we mean by machine learning, especially. And I think that the fact that we've got machine learning within the platform allows us to have one of our biggest USPs, which is sub 10-second mitigation on all attacks. Now, with most other SLAs, what you'll see in the industry is they will say a mitigation time, they'll put a time to it, and that will vary completely depending on the provider that you're talking to. However, it will always normally say that it's a case of it will mitigate on all known attacks, but unknown attacks are best effort. They're not included. So with our SLA, we go that one step further. We put a money-back guarantee in every contract which says that if we can't mitigate that attack in under 10 seconds, then money back. So I think that's quite key to pick up on. I like that response. Yeah, so talking about the different things that you need in order, or we believe, to create a good security platform. We obviously think machine learning is absolutely paramount, trying to minimize the amount of human error and everything that comes in. Automation as well. Obviously, how can we reduce the amount of time that the actual end customer has to spend monitoring the platform, and being able to harness the cloud, because obviously the attacks are coming from the cloud as well. So I won't go too much into a bit about Link11, because I can see there's some tired eyes around the room, and I'm sure that if you wish to know, we can certainly have a conversation about that another time. But our product portfolio consists of 5 key core products. Some of them play together, or well, they all play together, but some of them sort of sit and work together. So you've got sort of web DDoS protection and WAF, alongside sort of DNS and CDN. These would be considered your edge services. It's about how do you protect from revenue loss, and how do you defend your brand reputation, and then infrastructure DDoS protection as well. Yeah, oh, there we go. Good system this. And then so infrastructure DDoS protection is about how do you protect your core infrastructure as well, and make sure that you're not vulnerable in that area. So who is using Link11? So some obviously quite familiar names. Hermes, the logistics provider, which everyone will be familiar with. They were suffering some large-scale DDoS attacks at their infrastructure, and it was a case of how do they mitigate against those. We were able to come in and partner with Hermes and be able to provide a solution which worked for them, in terms of they only had actually a pretty small SOC team internally, so they didn't need something that was going to be ultra complex and time intensive. They didn't have the time to be able to set that up. So being able to utilise the fact of the machine learning and also the heavy automation that exists within Link11 enabled this to make it a secure approach, but one that wasn't too time intensive on resource. And it's a similar case for ATU as well, and how they protect. So as I say, I don't want to take up too much time this afternoon, because everyone's had a long day and heard a lot of DDoS stats and a lot of security stats in general. What I would say though is we would welcome anyone that obviously wants to come and speak to us. What we're doing is we're going to do a little bit of a prize draw as well. So for anyone that books a demo with us following the presentation, we're going to be doing an Amazon £100 gift voucher giveaway. afterwards. So just a little bit of an incentive to come and talk to us as well, if the technology wasn't enough.
Wait, I really quit? I'll think about it.